Having spoken about the economy in broad terms, and in the process raising the issue about corruption, it is now time for us to consider more closely what goes into corruption and how we can make a distinction between what looks like corruption and what, as a matter of fact, is not corruption. In this respect, we talk about gifts. So we're interested in, especially in the gift, because that also has implications as far as corruption is concerned. There's a question of, we'd like to look at the characteristics of the gift tax, bribery, and transformations of gift culture. Now let us begin by looking at bribery. What is bribery? Bribery is something that involves financial inducement or exchange of favors, essential between officials and members of the public. It may be the inducement that a particular official needs or requires to perform his or her duty. Officials who should follow laid down procedures and rules may either ignore the rule or apply it in such a way that at the end of the day it benefits someone who has given something to that official. The terms bribery and corruption may be treated as synonyms. In other words, replaceable terms. But they are not exactly synonyms. If anything at all, corruption is the bigger term, the more inclusive term. And bribery can be seen as an aspect of corruption. Now, when we're talking about corruption, bribery, there are what we may refer to as instruments. Those instruments may be described to include solicited and unsolicited donations, shady gifts of all kinds, money or financial inducement, hampers or Xmas or Christmas at Christmas time, sexual favors or other favors. Let us understand that a bribe may be initiated by the giver or by the recipient. And the bribe donation may come before the favor or after the favor. Related to bribery is a question of patronage. And we can see patronage as indirect bribery. In other words, the using of handouts, favors, to cultivate relationships with people in authority, so as to induce these officials to grant unwarranted favors in the future. In patronage, the giving and the receiving are apparently disjointed. So patronage is similar to cronyism, nepotism. You may call it motivated cronyism or motivated nepotism. Now, having said all this, let's for a moment shift our gaze onto the subject of patronage in the judiciary. And these are the views of a judge, long before Arimayao and the judges came to our attention. From the report, a renowned judge, a renowned private legal practitioner, name has been taken out, has called on other judges to desist from accepting gifts from lawyers and members of the public, since the practice has a tendency to compromise their neutrality. He indicated that such gifts were given out with the future in mind, and judges who accepted them risk compromising their positions on cases involving their benefactors. And this is a comment taken from the Daily Graphic. So this comment tells us something about patronage. But bribery can sometimes be confused with other transactions. Let us bear in mind that bribery is not gift giving. The bribe and the gift are not the same. They look alike, but they are not the same. Bribery looks like buying and selling, purchase, but again, it's not the same. And essentially, the issue is that you are talking about legalities. Bribery is illegal. Favors given and taken are not in the gift of the giver in the case of bribery, because it violates the process. That is what makes it bribery. Now, what about a gift? The gift, we can say, is anything which is tangible or intangible, item or property, a thing, a service, even a person, given and received. But a gift is not a commodity that you buy and sell in the marketplace. The giver and the taker, in the case of gifts, usually are acquaintances and associates, or are expected to be, or want to be. It is usually assumed that the gifts are free and voluntary. This may be true only in the sense that no one can be charged in a law court for failing to give or take a gift. But there is a motive, and that makes it necessary to give a gift. Thus, gifts are not entirely free. The resemblances. Gifts resemble bribes, but as we have pointed out, they also differ. A gift also resembles purchase and barter, but there again it differs. Bribes can be disguised, however, as gifts. And in making a comparison between gifts, bribes, and purchase, it is advisable to consider the following parameters: the legality of it, equivalence, morality, specificity, and so on and so forth. These are important criteria to take into account in making the comparison. Morality of the gift. Gifts go by a certain kind of morality which imposes obligations. There is a social and a moral pressure to engage in gift giving. This can vary between cultures. Cultural norms, therefore, make gifts not to be entirely free. With regards to gifts, social and moral obligations exist. This makes the gift not to be free at all. And it's not surprising that Americans say there is nothing like a free lunch. Gifts are not really free in the moral sense. So gifts go with obligations. And there are three obligations that we have to take into account as far as scholars are concerned. There is the obligation to give, the obligation to accept, and the obligation to return. I may not be able to explain all these one by one, but you can see from the transparency what it implies. What is also interesting about these things is the indefiniteness of the quantities in gift giving. Whether these are tokens or expensive things, gifts are economic, and states even require citizens to declare gifts and pay gift taxes. So gifts are very economic. Yet the economic character of the gift is often suppressed. For example, the quantities and the values of the things used as gifts are not highlighted at all. Or people pretend that it is not important. What is important is that one good form deserves a return. And therefore, gifts invite counter gifts. It also implies that they should not be seen to be equivalent in quantity or in value. More importantly, a decent time lapse should separate one gift act from another or a counter gift act. Why the gift is not purchase or barter? Purchase employs money, but gift, like barter, does not. It's just direct, it's exchange of materials, rarely money, although it can be money. Purchase and barter, in purchase and barter, there is semblance of equivalent. What is purchased? The two things, the money which exchanges hands and the thing that is taken by the other person, are deemed to be equivalent in value. Otherwise, the transaction will not be there. But in gift giving, that is not the case. Gift giving does not seek equivalence. In any case, if there is equivalent at all, the equivalent is a long-term equivalent, it's not a short-term equivalent. It should not be seen to be a short-term equivalent. Purchase and barter. These are transactions that may engage strangers. But that is not the case when it comes to gift. But you may well ask yourself, but then if you say that gift giving does not involve strangers, how about the street beggar who is begging and taking things from people? Is he not a stranger? That is a very interesting question which I will not answer now. In purchase, exchange is simultaneous. So as money changes hands, the object also changes hands. Or at least things ought to happen that way. You'll find that in purchase, the process is episodic. It happens once and it disappears. Once it is done and is concluded, the relationship also ends. Buyer and seller relationship ends. But in the case of the gift, the relationship endures, it continues. If you consider purchase, you see that the transactors often know what they want. But in the case of the gift, the expectation is vague. Giving something to someone means that there is expectation that someday the person will give you back. But what is he going to give to you? You don't know. That's the nature of the gift. And very often surprise is possible in gift giving. Now, if we consider more closely the features of the gift, the bribe, you'll find that the bribe is like purchase, except that it is immoral and it is illegal. When people engage in bribery, they are actually buying and selling, except that what they are buying and selling is illegal. And it's illegal because it violates laid down regulations and procedures are being violated. Now, like the gift, the bribe also involves reciprocation. It involves give and take. Okay? And anything at all may be used, as in the case of the gift. And like purchase, the object of the bribe is specific. People know exactly what they want. Okay? And that, what it is that people want is known to both parties. That's not the case when you're talking about a gift. And like purchase, a bribe is short-term. Undue delay is not tolerated. When a desirable outcome is not forthcoming, one of the parties may blow the whistle, okay, because he feels cheated or she feels cheated. Bribe, on the other hand, bribe often is not voluntary, okay? It's not a voluntary act. It is compelled. Often it is solicited, directly or indirectly. And it becomes, for someone, the only way that person can get his desires if he wants to at least obtain certain things. So the giving very often is induced in the case of the bride. Now, when you compare purchase and the gift, you'll find that gifts bind people. They create and sustain relationships between people. But in bribery, the personal relationships are not the issue at all. So the bribe has features of both gift and purchase or barter. And for that reason, it is possible to dress a bribe in the clothes of a gift. Okay? If a gift aims to establish immoral obligations in the future, then that gift is not a gift at all, but a bribe. So somebody can use a gift, but the aim of the giving of the gift is to try and establish an obligation which is immoral, which may not be in the present but in the future. Where this is the case, that gift is not a gift at all. It's made to look like a gift, but in fact it's a bribe. And some people, in fact, cultivate relationships with the police, with the judges, and so on. And they do so now so that one day they can use that relationship to make demands that cannot be refused. In this respect, gifts of this nature are not gifts. They may help establish patron-client relationships, but they are bribes. Often a bribe is made to look like a gift. Thus, gift giving, which is culturally acceptable, has been seen in a negative light. However, a true gift differs from a bribe. Gifts oil social relationships. Gifts are moral and legal. they do not aim to subvert. They do not aim to subvert official or bureaucratic rules and functions. Gifts may demand reciprocation, but usually they leave the party free to determine the time, the mode, and the medium of the reciprocation. Where these conditions are not fulfilled, a gift is not a gift at all. Now, the question of gift tax. A tax on a transfer of property by one individual to another while receiving nothing or less than full value in return. This is what is known as a gift. And the tax applies whether the donor intends the transfer to be a gift or not. Ghanaians, of course, are not very happy about paying gift taxes. So the question that we need to answer now is, how can the transformation of gifts into bribes be prevented? My advice is that if a gift is disguised as a bribe, just simply unmask it, reject it, or nullify it. A gift can be nullified, a bribe can be nullified by paying the giver. Okay? If somebody gives you something, just pay the person the true value of it, you've succeeded in nullifying it. The bribe has now been converted into purchase. Okay? You make it into a commodity. Thus, once the payment has been effected, the taker owes nothing to the giver. Okay? Any role for the whistleblower in this kind of case? Yes, but the whistleblower often has a dangerous role to play. And you may ask Arimaya Anas the implications of being a whistleblower. Even with the video evidence, it is not plain sailing in his case. But the point is, neither solicit, give, nor accept bribes. Unfortunately, this takes courage. There's need, therefore, to stiffen the sanctions and penalties to prevent people from taking bribes. And finally, what I do is I present a table which summarizes the differences comparing a bribe, a purchase, a gift, and barter. So they can see where they resemble, where they differ, and so on and so forth. This table enables us to see clearly that a bribe cannot be a gift, and a gift cannot be a bribe. Okay? And purchase is different from a gift. Okay? Purchase, of course, and barter are more or less the same. Okay? So this brings the discussion on this topic to an end.